Hi, welcome to the MLATA YouTube series on all things legal tech. Today we have Professor Bijan Parsia from the University of Manchester in the Department of Computer Science. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
How are you today?
I'm quite fine. Thanks.
Well, thanks for coming along. We want to ask you a few questions. So I guess the first part is, what made you have an interest in legal tech? Because I suppose your background is mainly in computer science. I just wondered if you can maybe talk to me about that.
So actually, my background is in philosophy. My BA, MS, and MA and PhD are all in philosophy. My computer science research is primarily in logic-based knowledge representation. And that field has a long history of looking at the law as an interesting place to work. So there are a number of subfields like theory revision that came out of trying to analyze how laws change over time, for example, and to come up with a formal theory of that. And so law is lovely because, and when I was a philosopher, we used to teach symbolic logic, and that was a common LSAT law, in the US, the exam that you need to take to go to law school, a LawStat prep, because we included critical reasoning, and a lot of the problems on that are logic puzzly like things. So I have a pretty close alignment with a lot of what you might call lawyerly thinking, just in my background, and in my particular subspecialty, trying to capture that and both understand it and then potentially support it in an automated way is a standard problem. So when the people in the business engagement team started reaching out to people in computer science, I was excited to see whether I could revise some of those old connections and pull things over. The other side that I would say is that I do a lot of work, and our department does a lot of work in clinical informatics, decision support, data acquisition, monitoring, prediction, all these kinds of things. And we're quite sophisticated there, from NLP, natural language processing, to UIs, to prediction models. And a lot of what we do seem to me should be in some sense transferable, but the domains are not the same, obviously, but they exhibit similar kinds of complexities. And that's a fascinating research area, addressing these kinds of complexities of dealing with multi-level, heterogeneous, not neatly fitting together knowledge management problems. I thought there was a chance for bringing stuff over that would be quite exciting. And so that's the main reason.
Okay. Is there current work done by the university or yourself in your department to sort of bridge the gap between computer science and legal tech at the moment?
Yes. I mean, when the first thing that I did actually was we ran a legal hackathon, which are fun. Kind of uniquely, we had teams that were half law students and half computer science students, and we were addressing a problem, access to the law for the deaf community. That was the sort of challenge problem that we put together in conjunction with the Legal Advice Center and the Deaf Center at the University of Manchester. The University of Manchester has as one of its core missions social responsibility. So all these things kind of came together very nicely. And that was really neat because the lawyers really knew very little tech, and the computer scientists knew very little law. And so the first few hours were them getting together and just back and forth about, oh, I think this is actually a problem. If I were advising a client, I kind of know what to do, but I have no idea how we would automate it. And then the computer scientists saying, oh, well, there's these different things that we could do. It doesn't have to be an AI, it could just be a UI, trying to make the user interface more friendly rather than necessarily automating anything. Mm-hmm. And that meeting of minds was very, very exciting. And I was surprised at how well all these teams kind of were mixing and thinking about complementary strengths, making sure that the problem space, communicating from the lawyers, the problem space, and communicating from the computer science, the solution space. And that sort of drove me to thinking about how we might do this more generally. And I think there's a big challenge when you deal with highly technical topics, which both the law and computer science are, that making sure that we're matching our understandings to produce a good joint understanding is extremely challenging. But I think what that hackathon showed me is that if we're just a little bit ground up, right, starting from not, I want a solution to some big problem, or, oh, I have this cool tech that you must use, but if we sort of talk a little more simply about what we can do, and actually we can make a lot of progress there. I don't know if that answered your question at all at this point.
No, it did. If anything, it showed that you don't necessarily need to have a law background to devise a legal tool. I'm a legal technologist myself at Freshfields. Although I do have a legal background, most of my colleagues don't have a legal background. They came from history or they studied English lit at university. And actually on that point, what do you think are the core technologies and tools that firms should be applying to drive innovation in legal services?
Again, it's kind of hard to say in a general way because in the end, things need to be fairly problem specific.
Yeah.
One thing that some of my colleagues who, for example, work in natural language processing tell me is that their impression is that when they go to sort of the law workshops for natural language processing is that law is about 10 years behind what they're doing in clinical informatics. So this means I don't think you need necessarily the most advanced bit, but particularly looking at natural language processing, even sort of the very tried and true stuff, potentially it won't fully automate a subsystem for you, but it could provide a boost. And I had some third year student projects. It was the final year of undergraduate, and they were exploring question answering, which is an NLP subdiscipline. You frame a question in natural language and you get spans of text in a big pile of documents that tells you the answer. And it's by no means, it would not replace a person even a little bit, but I think it could be as much of a win for lawyers as keyword search was. So, being able to search having an inverted index that allows you to search all, thousands and thousands and thousands of documents to sort of winnow things down. This could be a significant step up for that, but it's not a complete whole replacement of anything kind of solution. So rather than saying what technologies, I would say start looking for things where we have some pretty tried and true technologies that would allow a step that would significantly improve your situation. So I think focusing on various kinds of natural language processing. I think machine learning I would be very careful about because I think that's a case where it's easy to think that you're going to get a lot more than you do get. So thinking about scoping your problems so that you can actually nail a solution with current machine learning technology is a good idea. I think thinking about workflow management and user interface. This is not as sexy as AI is going to, artificial lawyer and stuff like that. But a lot of what people struggle with in managing complex situations is the way that your information system supports that process. And there's a lot of work in clinical informatics and in other areas about trying to make your situational awareness in a process, in an information space, more manageable. And I think that often would be the best thing to be looking at, how to put your team in a position that their very good judgment is at play and that nonsense work that drains them for no particular use is out of the way. So I don't think so much there's a technology silver bullet. There are thinking about how you engineer your whole process. There's a lot of places where various technologies can come together to benefit you. And that's what I think that's the better way to think about how you drive innovation. Not is there something that replaces everything, but how can we look at what we're doing and get boosts in it using an array of often quite standard technology, but in a smart way.
Just also on that point, so you've obviously kind of gone into it a bit already, but how should firms maybe improve their understanding if they've never really had any exposure to any of these tools or just these basic things they don't really have an understanding? Where should they start really?
It's a challenging problem. So my third years this year did a workshop for LawTech and trying to demonstrate and explore question answering as a technology. So illustrating it, they gave a little bit of the guts because there are computer science students and not really a computer science presentation if you don't have an architecture diagram somewhere in it, but they were more focused on, okay, look, here's something that we can do, and here's a place where it's kind of weak, and here's kind of an assessment of how we think it might play out. So I think one way to get started is to reach out to students, for example, who are doing projects, propose projects, and let them explore what's going on. And instead of doing sort of big analysis, do more small analysis, get small test demonstrator systems that allow you to explore the technology in a hands-on way. I think that's one of the things that tends to be a problem. Often people feel like they have to build up or buy a big complex system and then start deploying it right away. But for me, as somebody in computer science, for anything that I do, and I tell my PhD students is, I usually have to implement some aspect of it or really work with the system and come to live with it, because there's an impressionistic understanding of the system that only comes from lived experience, I would say. And I think particularly for strategists at law firms, bringing in teams, setting up scenarios where a team can try something in a small way, but realistically, so they can get a feel for the strengths and weaknesses of it, will upskill their ability to assess technology. I think if you look at lists of things or you read white papers and stuff like that, you will not have that kind of ground level understanding. And so I think trying to set up scenarios where people can get that kind of expert user understanding of a technology will go a long way to figuring out whether this is going to be something that you should invest heavily in or not. If you see these demos of question answering systems, think, oh yeah, that'll solve all our doc review problems or all our disclosure problems. And then you buy an expensive system, and then the first 3 times you try to use it, it all falls apart. It's not a good way to learn whether it was any good. If, on the other hand, you start with a demo system and have somebody try to use it for a real task and support them in that, then I think you could learn a lot more about the more restricted but effective ways that you could actually use the technology. And I think that's a lot of what you need to do. It's not about understanding how the technology works even. It's more about understanding its actual limitations and promises in real world situations.
Well, that was incredibly interesting, and it actually matches some of the work that I do at Freshers as well. And I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this channel, who are also legal technologists, will definitely feel the same. But thank you very much for your insights today. Hopefully, we can have you on again in our YouTube channel. Thank you so much, Professor Bijan.
Thank you.
Thank you.